Hey y'all, my name is Annie. Welcome to my channel, Eat, Drink, and Be Reading. And today we're gonna do something a little different. I am Eat, Drink, and Be Reading, and I'm gonna focus on the eat and reading part today. I'm gonna talk about cookbooks that I've loved to read. So I tend to get a couple cookbooks for Christmas every year because I love to cook and I love books, and so they're perfect. And they're not something I usually buy for myself like I do regular books. And I've learned that I love to read them cover to cover. Like, I read the description of every recipe. I just find them so fun. I have a hard time reading books while I eat, and sometimes at lunch I will get a few minutes to sit by myself, and I tend to read cookbooks during that time, or occasionally I'll pull them out when my husband is watching something on television and I know I won't have the focus for like a novel or nonfiction. And so I have grown to really love to read cookbooks, and some are better to read than others. Some have a major focus on recipe, which is great. But some give you more stories and explanations, and those are the ones I'm going to talk about today. So I'm going to talk about 4 that I loved and 1 that I did not. So let's get started with probably my favorite cookbook that I've read, and it is one of the first cookbooks that I received. Before then, I was doing most of my recipe finding online. We went through a period that was just really busy and crazy. My husband had crazy work hours. We'd had our second kid, and there was like a year where I cooked the same like 10 recipes over and over again. And I know that is normal for a lot of people, and that is great. I like to cook new things, and so that Christmas I asked for some cookbooks. And so this was one that my husband picked out. It was not on my list, so I was a little annoyed with him at first, but I'm really grateful for it. It's The Homemade Kitchen by Alana Chernilla. I probably not saying that right, but it is beautiful. There are beautiful pictures in it. But what I love is at the beginning of each section, I should have like marked it. She like talks a little bit about what to do, and like she gives simple instructions. Like there was a page on how to boil an egg, and she talks about that. This is actually, she's talking about her daughter learning to cook, and here she talks about how to make a salad, but there's stories involved, and here's a story about her like love for making bread, and so and she talks about how and why to clean your spoons, and she tells all these stories about her husband and her children, and so like I felt like I knew her. Like by the end, I felt like I knew her, and from her cookbook, and that was a lot of fun. And so I highly recommend this one. There's a few of the recipes in here that I really love. Probably not one of my go-to recipe books, although there are a few. But if you like to bake, there's several good baking recipes. There's some good salads, and some like more time-intensive recipes. So if you looking for some good like weekend cooking or baking, this is a great option. Okay, number 2 is called Near and Far, Recipes Inspired by Home and Travel by Heidi Swanson. This is a vegetarian cookbook. But I've noticed it has more like side dish recipes than it does good main dish recipes. But this one is great because she travels. Let me see if I can find exactly where. She's from San Francisco, and so she starts by talking about some recipes from San Francisco, and then she talks about traveling on a plane, and then she talks about Morocco, Japan, Italy, France, and India. And she spent time in each of those, learning some of the recipes, and at the beginning of each section, she talks about that place. So this one doesn't have as much like fun reading per recipe like some of the other books do, but I love that she takes us around the world. And so you get to go a little bit around the world with food, and she does give you some background and some stories to go along with that. And I love to cook international food. I have not found a whole lot of recipes in here that I like, but if you're a big vegetarian eater and you want to try some new things and you want to enjoy reading about different parts of the world, Near and Far by Heidi Swanson, it's a great choice. Speaking of traveling around the world, the next two are both a little more international, kind of like based in other cultures. And this first one is Giada's Italy. Most of my cookbooks are not from like super well-known televised chefs, but this one is. I got this one this past Christmas. I'm actually reading through it right now, so I will admit I haven't finished it quite yet. But Giada spends, I don't know if it's like a year or something in Italy. Her family's Italian, but she grew up in California. And she gives just, I mean, first of all, the pictures are beautiful, and she throughout it will talk, she tells about Italy and about how they serve their pizza and different kinds of cheeses they use, and different styles of meals that they have throughout the day. And so if you love Italian food, if you love Italy, or just Europe in general, if you just want to go and feel like you are getting immersed in another culture, this is a great book for that. My husband bought it for me for Christmas because we went to Italy last year and I miss Italy. And this just brings me back. And it's such a fun read for a cookbook. And I love learning more about Italian culture. And I want to make like everything in this book. So, Giada's Italy. And this one might have the prettiest pictures of them all. Okay, last of the ones I've loved. And this is A Common Table, 80 Recipes and Stories from My Shared Cultures by Cynthia Chin McTurnan. And so Cynthia is of Chinese heritage, and her parents were immigrants, and she grew up in South Carolina. Her husband, his family is Korean. He grew up in Hawaii. They met in Boston. So there's a lot of cultures in here, and she mixes all of those things together. So she has some Southern dishes, some Chinese dishes, some Korean dishes, and she mixes a lot of them. If you like Asian fusion, this is a wonderful cookbook. But she also tells stories, that's so sweet. Her stories about meeting her husband and them cooking together, and her learning to cook and figuring out that she actually really likes to cook, starting her blog, Two Red Bowls, about having her son and cooking for her son. So if you like a mixing of cultures and you like just good origin family stories, this is a great one. And actually, this is one of the cookbooks I cook from the most. Some really great, simple recipes in here that we have grown to love. She gives a little, most of them have a description, but a lot of times they're just talking about the recipe itself, but she is kind of talking about where it came from her family, or where, from her dorm mates, or wherever she learned it, or how she created it. She gives a little description of that. And then I'm trying to find, and then with the homemade kitchen, there will be pages that are, I can't find one right now, that are just a full story. There's yelling in the background, but they're happy. My kids are happy. Sorry if you can hear it. So it was really fun to read as well. Sorry if I finished A Common Table kind of quickly. I had the kids yelling. I thought it was happy yelling, but it was, your 2-year-old is getting into your underwear drawer, mommy. So, had to run. The last book I'm going to talk about, the last cookbook, is a cookbook I thought that I was going to love, at least the reading part. I didn't know how the recipes would be, but that I thought I was going to love reading. And I didn't. And that is Reese Witherspoon's Whiskey in a Teacup. It's actually really pretty. I don't love pink, but for some reason I really love this one. And there's some cute drawings in it. And she's telling her story of growing up in Tennessee and her family and the parties they would throw and the food they would cook. And so I am in the South, I'm in North Carolina. I thought that I would really relate to this and really enjoy it. But Reese, first name basis apparently, grew up in a very different South, I think, than I grew up in. She grew up in a much wealthier South than I did. I mean, I don't know how wealthy her family was, but they were definitely wealthier than mine. And I didn't relate to like any of it at all. And I just kept getting frustrated because she was talking like, this is the South. This is Southern cooking. This is Southern culture. And it was not my South. And that's okay. And it wouldn't have bothered me as much, I think, if she talked about it as like her experiences, but she was talking about it as if this is the South. And first of all, I keep saying the South, like, let me say, it has its issues, seriously. And so I think there's also a bit of romanticizing of it in this book. And I don't know that that's fair or right either. Yeah, so this is probably one of the better selling cookbooks ever. And it's, it's a mix. It's a mix of storytelling and like party playlists and recipes. But I didn't like the storytelling. I didn't relate. And I was so excited when I got it, and then I was so disappointed and felt like I was slogging through it to finish it. Bummer. But there were 4 great books. Yay! What? And I loved them, and I wish I could hold them all, but I only have 2 hands. And I hope that if you are a book lover who wants to learn to like cooking more, these are great places to start, because you feel like if you get the cookbook and you read it, at least you've enjoyed that, even if you end up not making any of the recipes. Let's talk below. Do you like cookbooks? Do you own a shelf full like I do over there? Do you like to read them? What are your favorite recipes, favorite cookbooks? Let's talk about it in the comments. Yeah. Like, subscribe. Talk to you later. Bye, y'all.